The ache had a specific timeline. 3 years, 1 month, and 12 days. Alara knew this with the kind of precision a prisoner might use to mark the walls of her cell. It was a dull, constant thrumming behind her ribs, a ghost limb of a love she could never claim. It flared into something sharp and piercing, a knife twisting in her gut, on nights like this. Nights when Maya came home smelling of rain and frustration, peeling off her coat and flinging her bag onto the floor with a sigh that seemed to drain all the oxygen from their small living room. "He doesn't listen," Maya announced to the room, but her eyes, the color of warm honey flecked with green, found Alara's. They always did. Alara was her anchor, her sounding board, her safe harbor in the endless, churning sea of her relationship with Liam. Alara was drowning. She placed a bookmark in her novel, the story of some far-off fantasy world dissolving into the much more immediate and painful reality of her own. She folded her hands in her lap, a practiced gesture of calm she did not feel. What happened this time? The question was a key turning in a familiar lock. The words tumbled out of Maya, a torrent of grievances. Liam had forgotten their anniversary dinner reservation. He had suggested they just order a pizza instead, completely missing the point. He had been on his phone the entire time she was trying to talk to him about it, scrolling through sports scores with a vacant expression. "It's like I'm not even there," Maya said, pacing the length of their worn floral rug. "It's like I'm a ghost in my own life, just floating around him while he does whatever he wants. Am I asking for too much, Elle? Just to be seen? To be heard?" The irony was a bitter pill on Alara's tongue. "You're asking for what I give you every single day," she thought, the words so loud in her head she feared they might have escaped. "I see you. I hear every word you don't say." Instead, she offered the same gentle, non-committal comfort she always did. "No, May. You're not asking for too much. You deserve to be listened to." It was a careful dance, this friendship. A choreography of suppression. Alara had to be supportive, but not too supportive, lest her advice sound like she was trying to break them up. She had to be a friend, a sister, a confidant, anything but what she actually was, the woman who had been hopelessly, irrevocably in love with Maya since the day Maya had shown up to their sophomore year dorm room with 2 mismatched suitcases and a smile that could have powered the entire city. 3 years, 1 month, and 12 days. Maya finally collapsed onto the couch, curling into the opposite corner from Alara, pulling a cushion into her lap and hugging it tight. The space between them felt like a canyon, a vast and uncrossable distance. Alara could feel the warmth radiating from her, could smell the vanilla and sandalwood scent of her perfume, a fragrance that had long ago become synonymous with the word home in Alara's mind. "He bought me flowers to apologize," Maya murmured into the cushion. "The same generic roses from the corner bodega. He does it every time. It's not an apology, it's a transaction. A guilt offering." Alara's heart twisted. She knew this cycle. The fight, the frustration, the grand but empty gesture, the temporary peace. She had watched it play out dozens of times. Each time, a small, treacherous part of her hoped this would be the one. The final fracture. And each time, she hated herself for that hope. Loving Maya meant wanting Maya to be happy, even if that happiness was with someone else. It was a beautiful, noble sentiment in theory. In practice, it felt like swallowing glass. "Talk to him," Alara said, her voice soft. "Tell him how it makes you feel. That you need more than just a placeholder apology." It was the right advice. The friend advice. The safe advice. Maya looked up, her gaze so direct and vulnerable it felt like a physical touch. "What would I do without you, Elle?" The question hung in the air, shimmering with a sincerity that made Alara's breath catch. "You'd be happy," she wanted to say. "You'd figure it out. But what would I do without you?" The thought was a chasm of pure terror. Maya was her everything, the sun her little world orbited, the reason she got up in the morning, the reason she couldn't sleep at night. To lose her, to lose even this painful, one-sided version of their relationship, was unthinkable. So she just smiled, a small, sad curve of her lips. "You'd be fine. You're the strongest person I know." Maya held her gaze for a long moment, an unreadable emotion swimming in those honey-gold depths. It felt longer than a moment. It felt like the world had paused, holding its breath. Then, as if a switch was flipped, the intensity vanished and she was just Maya again. She offered a tired smile back. Liar. But thank you for saying it. They sat in a comfortable silence after that, the television murmuring in the background, casting flickering blue light across their faces. Ilara pretended to watch, but her senses were entirely focused on the woman beside her. On the way Maya's chest rose and fell with each breath, the way a stray curl of dark hair had fallen across her forehead, the way she chewed on her lower lip when she was lost in thought. Ilara had catalogued a million of these tiny details. They were the secret treasures she kept locked away in the vault of her heart, trinkets of an impossible love. She knew the exact shade of green that appeared in Maya's eyes when she was truly laughing. She knew the little humming sound Maya made when she was enjoying her food. She knew that Maya slept with her left hand tucked under her cheek and that she was terrified of spiders but fascinated by thunderstorms. She knew everything about Maya, except how to stop loving her. The stasis was comfortable in its misery. It was a known quantity. Ilara understood the rules of her own private torment. She knew the lines she could not cross, the words she could not say. Her life was a carefully constructed fortress built to contain the hurricane of her feelings, and as long as Maya was with Liam, the walls would hold. It was a fragile peace, but it was peace nonetheless. She had convinced herself she could live like this forever, existing in the margins of Maya's life, a silent, steadfast presence. She was the best friend. That was her role. And she played it to perfection, even as it was slowly, quietly hollowing her out from the inside. The night wore on. Maya eventually pushed herself off the couch. I'm going to bed. I'm so tired of feeling like this. Get some sleep, Ilara said, her voice a little hoarse. Things might look better in the morning. Maya paused at the doorway to the hall. Hey, Elle. Yeah, thanks. For everything. And with that, she was gone, leaving Ilara alone in the quiet living room with the ghost of her perfume and the relentless, familiar ache in her chest. An ache that was 3 years, 1 month, and 12 days old and showed no signs of ever going away. The status quo didn't break. It shattered. It happened on a Tuesday. A day so relentlessly ordinary that the subsequent chaos felt all the more jarring. Ilara had been grading midterm papers, her desk lamp casting a warm circle of light in the otherwise dim apartment. She was lost in the complexities of 18th century poetry, a world far removed from her own emotional turmoil, when the front door burst open. It wasn't the usual sound of Maya coming home. There was no gentle click of the lock, no soft thud of her bag. This was a crash, a violent intrusion of sound and energy. Ilara's head snapped up, her heart leaping into her throat. Maya stood in the entryway, silhouetted by the harsh hallway light. She was drenched, her hair plastered to her face, rain dripping from the hem of her jacket onto the floor, forming a dark puddle. But it wasn't the rain that made Ilara's blood run cold. It was the look on Maya's face. A raw, broken expression that stripped away all her usual charisma and warmth, leaving behind something fragile and utterly devastated. She was shaking. May? Ilara was on her feet in an instant, the chair scraping loudly against the wood floor. What's wrong? What happened? Maya didn't answer. She just stared at Ilara, her chest heaving with ragged, silent sobs. The sight was so profoundly wrong, like seeing the sun fall from the sky. Maya was the vibrant one, the one who laughed loud and loved fiercely. This hollowed-out version of her was a stranger. Ilara crossed the room in 3 strides, her hands hovering, unsure of where to land. Are you hurt? Did something happen with Liam? The name was the trigger. A gut-wrenching sob tore from Maya's throat, a sound of pure agony. She collapsed into Ilara's arms, her body heavy with a grief that felt immense and suffocating. Ilara wrapped her arms around her instinctively, holding her tight as the storm broke. It's over, Maya choked out, her words muffled against Ilara's shoulder. We're over. For good this time. Ilara just held her, murmuring soft, meaningless words of comfort, stroking her wet hair. A treacherous, shameful part of her felt a flicker of something that resembled relief, but it was instantly extinguished by the overwhelming reality of Maya's pain. This wasn't a victory. This was a devastation. The end of a 5-year relationship, the dismantling of a life Maya had thought was her future. She guided Maya to the couch, peeling off her soaked jacket and tossing it aside. She grabbed the worn Afghan from the back of the armchair and wrapped it around Maya's trembling shoulders. Maya curled into a tight ball, her face blotchy and stained with tears, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Alara had ever seen her. For the next hour, the story came out in fractured pieces, punctuated by sobs and long, shuddering silences. It wasn't one big thing, but 1,000 small ones. The culmination of years of feeling unheard, of being taken for granted. The fight had started over something trivial. Liam had made plans with his friends on a night they were supposed to spend together, but it had quickly spiraled, unearthing every buried resentment, every unspoken disappointment. "He said I was being demanding," Maya whispered, her voice raw. "He said he didn't understand what I wanted from him. And I looked at him, and I realized I don't think he's ever even tried to understand. He doesn't know me, Elle. Not really. And maybe he never did." The confession landed in the quiet room with the weight of a tombstone. Alara's heart ached for her, a pure, uncomplicated empathy that temporarily overshadowed her own tangled feelings. She sat beside Maya, her hand resting on her back, feeling the tremors that still racked her body. They sat like that for a long time, well past midnight. The rain continued to beat against the window panes, a mournful percussion to the somber mood inside. Eventually, Maya's sobs subsided into exhausted, hiccuping breaths. The apartment was quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall and the sound of their breathing. "I don't want to go into my room," Maya said suddenly, her voice barely a whisper. "Everything in there reminds me of him. His stupid sweatshirt I always sleep in, the picture on the nightstand." Her voice broke again. "You don't have to," Alara said immediately. "You can stay out here." Maya shook her head, pulling the Afghan tighter around herself. She looked at Alara, her eyes wide and pleading in the dim light. There was a raw terror in them. The terror of being truly alone for the first time in 5 years. "Can I?" She hesitated, biting her lip. The question seemed to cost her a monumental effort. "This is going to sound so stupid. So childish." "Nothing you say could sound stupid right now," Alara reassured her, her heart beginning to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. Maya took a deep breath. "Can I sleep in here tonight? With you? In your bed? I really, really don't want to be alone." The world tilted on its axis. Every rational thought in Alara's mind screamed no. It was a terrible idea. A dangerous, reckless invitation to a kind of pain she couldn't even imagine. Sharing a bed with the woman she loved, the woman whose heart was shattered by another man, it was a form of exquisite torture she surely didn't deserve. It would be crossing a line, not a physical one, but an emotional one, a boundary that kept her safe in her fortress of unrequited love. But the rational part of her brain was drowned out by the sight of Maya, so broken and lost, asking for the one thing Alara could give her: comfort. Proximity. A shield against the dark. How could she possibly say no? Saying no would be an act of self-preservation. Saying yes was an act of love. Her own conflicted heart be damned. "Of course," Alara heard herself say, the words feeling like they belonged to someone else, someone far braver than she was. "Of course you can." The relief that washed over Maya's face was so profound it was almost painful to watch. It was the look of a drowning person finally finding a life raft. And in that moment, Alara knew she had made the only choice she ever could have. She was about to walk willingly into the heart of the hurricane, and she had no idea if she would survive it. The first night was an exercise in suspended animation. Alara lay on the far left side of her queen-sized bed, her body rigid, every muscle tensed. She felt like a live wire, humming with an energy that was equal parts terror and a forbidden, soaring hope. The space between her and Maya was a scant few inches, but it felt like a supercharged electric field. She could hear every breath Maya took. Shallow, stuttering breaths that occasionally hitched with a suppressed sob. She could smell the faint, clean scent of her own lavender body wash on Maya's skin from the shower she'd taken, a scent that was now inextricably tangled with the vanilla and sandalwood of Maya's shampoo. The combination was intoxicating, and it was making it impossible for Alara to breathe normally. Maya had fallen asleep almost instantly, a deep, exhausted sleep that only comes after complete emotional depletion. But Alara remained awake, staring up at the patterns the moonlight made on her ceiling. She was acutely aware of the warmth of Maya's body next to hers, a heat that seemed to seep across the sheets and envelop her. It was a proximity she had dreamed of for years, but the reality of it was a sharp, poignant agony. She was a comfort object, a placeholder for a warmth that was no longer there. The thought was a fresh turn of the knife. She must have drifted off eventually, because she awoke with a start in the deep, pre-dawn quiet. Something was different. The weight on her arm. She glanced down. In her sleep, Maya had turned over, her face now angled towards Alara, and her hand had come to rest on Alara's waist. It was a light touch, an unconscious gesture of seeking comfort, but to Alara, it felt like a brand. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She didn't move. She couldn't. She just lay there, barely breathing, studying the sleeping face of the woman she loved. In the soft gray light, the lines of stress and grief had eased. She looked peaceful. She looked beautiful. A single tear escaped Alara's eye, tracing a hot path down her temple and into her hair. It was a tear of profound loneliness, of a love so vast and so secret it felt like it would tear her apart. The next morning, Maya awoke looking disoriented, her eyes puffy and red. When she realized where she was, a flicker of embarrassment crossed her face. "Oh my God, Elle. I'm so sorry. I totally invaded your space." "Don't be sorry," Alara said, her voice rough with sleep. She was already dressed, nursing a mug of coffee, pretending she hadn't been awake for hours watching Maya sleep. "It's fine. Did you get any rest?" "More than I thought I would," Maya admitted, her voice hushed. I felt safe." The word hung in the air between them. Safe. It was a simple word, but it felt loaded with a significance that made Alara's hands tremble around her mug. That night, Maya didn't even have to ask. After a quiet dinner of takeout, eaten mostly in silence, she simply followed Alara into her bedroom, crawling under the covers on her side of the bed as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And so a new routine began. A fragile, unspoken arrangement that thrummed with a tension so thick Alara could taste it. The days were a blur of navigating Maya's grief. Alara listened as Maya cycled through anger, sadness, and a bewildering sense of numbness. She encouraged her to eat, dragged her out for walks, and sat with her through terrible, sappy movies that made them both cry for different reasons. But the nights were different. The nights were their own secret world. In the darkness of Alara's bedroom, with the city lights painting soft stripes across the walls, the careful boundaries of friendship began to blur and dissolve. The conversations started slowly. At first, they were just rehashes of the breakup, Maya picking apart every memory, searching for the exact moment it had all gone wrong. But then, the conversations deepened. They started talking about what love was supposed to feel like. With Liam, it felt performative, Maya confessed one night, her voice a soft murmur in the dark. Like we were playing the roles of boyfriend and girlfriend. We did the couple things. We went to the right restaurants, we took the right pictures. But the connection. It always felt like I was reaching for something that wasn't there. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Alara whispered back, her heart aching with understanding. What do you think it's supposed to feel like? Maya asked, turning her head on the pillow to face Alara. Real love. What does it feel like? Alara's throat went dry. How could she possibly answer that? How could she describe the way her world tilted every time Maya smiled at her? The way her name on Maya's lips felt like a prayer? The way a simple, accidental brush of their hands in the kitchen could send a jolt of electricity through her entire body? How could she describe a love that felt as essential and as natural as breathing? I think Alara started, choosing her words with painstaking care. I think it's supposed to feel easy. Not the relationship itself. Relationships are work. But the loving part. That should be the easy part. It should feel like coming home. There was a long silence. Alara could feel Maya's gaze on her in the darkness. Coming home, Maya repeated softly, as if testing the weight of the words. I like that. As the weeks passed, the physical space between them in the bed shrank. It happened gradually, a slow, unconscious drift. A foot brushing against a leg. A shoulder settling against another. One evening, while they were watching a movie propped up against the pillows, Maya shivered. I'm cold, she murmured. Before Alara could suggest getting another blanket, Maya shifted, tucking herself against Alara's side, her head coming to rest on Alara's shoulder. She looped an arm around Alara's waist, pulling herself close. Alara froze. Her entire body went rigid. Maya's hair was tickling her chin, smelling of vanilla. The warmth of her breath was a ghost against her neck. The solid, comforting weight of her body pressed against her side was both a dream come true and an unbearable torture. Is this okay? Maya asked, her voice small and hesitant. No. Yes. I don't know. It's okay, Alara managed to say, her voice tight. She forced herself to relax, to let her own arm come to rest around Maya's shoulders. It felt terrifyingly right. Like a puzzle piece she hadn't known was missing had just clicked into place. They watched the rest of the movie like that, in a silence that was filled with the frantic beating of Alara's heart. From that night on, the touching became more frequent, more intentional. Maya seemed to crave the physical contact, the reassurance of it. She would reach for Alara's hand while they were talking, her thumb tracing lazy circles over Alara's knuckles. If Alara was reading on the couch, Maya would lie down and rest her head in Alara's lap, closing her eyes as Alara's hesitant fingers began to card through her dark hair. Each touch was a spark on Alara's skin, lighting a fire that she had to constantly fight to keep banked. She felt like she was living a double life. In one, she was the supportive friend, helping Maya heal. In the other, she was living out a fantasy so potent and so painful it left her breathless. And then she started to notice the looks. It happened for the first time on a Sunday morning. They were in the kitchen, making pancakes. Alara was concentrating on flipping one, a smudge of flour on her cheek. She said something, a stupid joke, and Maya laughed. It was the first real, genuine laugh Alara had heard from her in weeks. The sound was like music. When Alara turned to smile at her, she found Maya already staring. But it wasn't her usual friendly gaze. There was a softness in her eyes, a sort of wondering quality that made Alara's stomach swoop. Maya's gaze lingered, her smile fading into something more contemplative, more intense. Then, for a fraction of a second, so quick Alara thought she might have imagined it, Maya's eyes dropped to her lips. The moment was broken as quickly as it began. The pancakes started to smoke, and Alara yelped, turning back to the stove, her face burning for reasons that had nothing to do with the heat. She told herself she imagined it. It was a trick of the light. Wishful thinking. But then it happened again. A few days later, they were sitting on the floor of the living room, sorting through a box of old photos. Maya was telling a story about a childhood vacation when she trailed off mid-sentence. Alara looked up from a picture of a gap-toothed, 7-year-old Maya. Maya was looking at her again, with that same soft, unfocused expression. This time, her gaze was fixed on Alara's mouth, a quiet intensity in her eyes that sent a shiver down Alara's spine. May? Alara prompted gently. Maya blinked, shaking her head as if coming out of a trance. Sorry. I lost my train of thought. She hadn't imagined it. It was real. And it terrified her. Because if it was real, it meant something was changing, shifting in the foundations of their friendship. And hope, Alara had learned, was a far more dangerous and painful emotion than despair. Despair was a quiet, constant companion. Hope was a wild, unpredictable thing that could tear you to pieces. The breaking point was inevitable. The constant, simmering tension had to go somewhere. The intimacy was a pressure cooker, and Alara was starting to crack under the strain. Living in this halfway house between friendship and something more was shredding her nerves. The hope that Maya's looks had ignited was a cruel fire, and Alara knew she had to extinguish it for her own sanity. She began to pull away. It was a subtle retreat, a series of small, calculated withdrawals. She started staying late at the university library, burying herself in research until the apartment was dark and Maya was already asleep. She would creep into her room and slide into bed, careful not to brush against Maya's sleeping form. When Maya suggested a movie night on the couch, Alara claimed she had a headache and retreated to her room with a book. She kept her hands busy, her posture closed off, creating a tiny, invisible buffer of space around herself at all times. She was trying to rebuild the walls of her fortress, stone by painful stone. She was trying to put the ghost of hope back in its cage. It was an act of self-preservation, but it felt like a betrayal. And it didn't go unnoticed. Maya grew quiet, a confused hurt clouding her eyes. The easy laughter that had started to return to their apartment faded. The air grew thick with unspoken questions. Alara could feel Maya's gaze on her constantly, trying to understand the new distance, the sudden chill. The confrontation happened 4 days into Alara's retreat. She was in the kitchen, washing her dinner plate, her back to the room. She knew Maya was there, sitting at the small kitchen table, but neither of them had spoken for 10 minutes. The silence was a living thing, heavy and suffocating. "You're avoiding me." Maya's voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a knife. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact, laced with a pain that made Alara flinch. Alara kept her back to her, her hands gripping the edge of the sink. "I'm not. I've just been busy." Midterms are coming up, the lie tasted like ash in her mouth. "Don't," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly. "Please don't lie to me, Al. Not you." That broke through her defenses. Alara turned off the water, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She slowly turned to face Maya, leaning back against the counter. Maya was watching her, her hands clasped tightly on the table, her expression a mixture of hurt and bewilderment. "You've barely looked at me for days," Maya continued, her voice gaining a desperate edge. "You flinch when I get close. You're hiding in your room. Did I do something? Did I cross a line? If I did, just tell me. Whatever it is, we can fix it. We always fix it." Alara's heart shattered. She was the one causing this pain. In her clumsy attempt to protect herself, she was hurting the one person she would do anything to protect. "You didn't do anything wrong," Alara said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not you. It's me." "What does that even mean?" Maya stood up, her chair scraping against the linoleum. She took a step closer, then stopped, as if she was afraid to breach the invisible wall Alara had built. "Talk to me. Please. This silence is killing me. I feel like I'm losing you and I can't lose you. You're my best friend." The words "best friend" landed like a punch to the gut. Alara squeezed her eyes shut. She couldn't do this. She couldn't tell her the truth. The truth would destroy everything. But Maya wasn't letting it go. She was searching, her mind working furiously to connect the dots. This started after we started, she gestured vaguely towards Alara's bedroom. "After I started sleeping in your room. Is that it? Am I making you uncomfortable? I can stop. I'll go back to my own room tonight if that's what you want." The thought of Maya leaving, of the bed becoming cold and empty again, sent a wave of panic through Alara that was so strong it made her dizzy. "No," she said, the word escaping her before she could stop it. "That's not what I want." "Then what is it?" Maya cried, her frustration boiling over. "Because I don't understand what's happening. All I know is that for the last month since Liam, the only time I felt okay, the only time I felt like myself is when I'm with you. And now you're pulling away, and it feels like the floor is dropping out from under me all over again." Her voice cracked, and her eyes welled up with tears. "I haven't missed him, Alara. Not for a second. I thought I would be a wreck, but I'm not. And I think it's because I had you. And being with you, just talking, watching movies. It feels more real than anything I ever had with him." She took another hesitant step forward, her gaze locked on Alara's, pleading for understanding. I'm so confused. My whole life, I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought I knew who I was. A girl who dates boys, who gets a boyfriend, who gets married. It was a path. And now, the path is gone and I'm lost. And I'm starting to think. Maybe it was the wrong path all along. Alara's breath hitched. The air was electric, charged with unspoken truths. This was it. The point of no return. Maybe, Maya whispered, her voice dropping so low Alara had to strain to hear it. Maybe I've been looking for the wrong things in the wrong people. Maybe the connection I was looking for wasn't with him. Her eyes were shining, a universe of confusion and dawning realization swirling within them. She closed the remaining distance between them, her presence filling Alara's senses. Vanilla, sandalwood, and something else, the clean, rain-like scent of her tears. I don't know what I am anymore, Maya confessed, her voice shaking. I don't know what this is. But I know that when you laugh, I feel it in my chest. And I know that I've been watching your mouth when you talk. The world stopped. And I'm scared out of my mind, Maya breathed, her gaze finally, irrevocably, dropping to Alara's lips. But I think, Alara, I think I've been wanting to kiss you. The confession hung in the kitchen, more fragile and more powerful than anything Alara had ever heard. It was a key, unlocking a door she had long ago accepted would remain sealed forever. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Maya's words echoed in the sudden, ringing silence, rewriting the past 3 years, 1 month, and now, 13 days of her life. Disbelief warred with a tidal wave of hope so immense it threatened to sweep her off her feet. It was too much, too impossible. This had to be a dream, a cruel hallucination brought on by years of silent, desperate wanting. But Maya was still there, standing a breath away, her eyes wide with a terrifying vulnerability, her own confession laid bare between them. She looked just as scared and lost as Alara felt. And in that shared terror, Alara found her voice. It came out as a ragged whisper. Wanting to kiss me? Maya nodded, a jerky, uncertain movement. For weeks. I didn't understand it. I kept telling myself it was just because I was lonely. Because you're my friend and you were being so good to me. But it's not that. It's more. More. The word was a universe. Alara felt the fortress she had so carefully constructed around her heart crumble to dust. The walls, the gates, the carefully guarded secrets, all of it gone in an instant. All that was left was the raw, aching truth. Maya, she began, her voice trembling so hard she could barely form the syllables. You think you've been wanting to kiss me for weeks? A hysterical little laugh, closer to a sob, escaped her. Weeks. Confusion flickered across Maya's face. Yes? Is that a bad thing? No, it's not bad, Alara breathed, shaking her head as tears she hadn't realized were forming began to spill down her cheeks. It's just. For me, it hasn't been weeks. She took a shaky breath, summoning every ounce of courage she possessed. This was it. The precipice. She had to jump. I've only ever seen you one way, May. Since the day I met you, her voice was thick with unshed tears, with years of unspoken emotion. I've been in love with you for 3 years. 3 years, 1 month, and 13 days. The timeline, her private, painful mantra, was finally spoken aloud. The secret was out, a wild bird released from its cage, and Alara felt a dizzying mix of terror and relief. Maya stared at her, her jaw slack. The confusion in her eyes was replaced by a look of profound, dawning shock. Her mind was clearly racing, recontextualizing every moment they had ever shared. Every late-night talk, every shared meal, every comforting hug, every time Alara had listened to her complain about Liam with a patient smile. 3 years. Maya whispered, the words barely audible. All this time, Alara could only nod, fresh tears tracking paths through the old ones. I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out. I was trying to pull away because it was getting too hard, being so close to you. I was trying to protect myself. I never, ever wanted to make you feel bad. But Maya wasn't looking angry or betrayed. She was looking at Alara as if she were seeing her for the first time. A million tiny expressions flickered across her face: shock, disbelief, wonder, and then, finally, a breathtaking, heart-stopping clarity. It was as if the final, crucial piece of a puzzle she didn't even know she was solving had just clicked into place. Oh, Maya breathed, a soft, wondrous sound. Oh, Alara. Everything made sense to her now. Her constant need for Alara's approval. Her dissatisfaction with a perfectly adequate boyfriend. The feeling that something vital was missing from her life. The strange, magnetic pull she had felt towards her best friend. A pull she had misunderstood and mislabeled for years. It wasn't just friendship. It had never been just friendship. She had been moving toward Alara all along, she just hadn't known the name of the destination. She reached out, her hand still trembling, and cupped Alara's cheek. Her thumb gently wiped away a tear. The touch was electric, a jolt of pure, undiluted feeling that shot through Alara's entire body. "You love me," Maya stated, not as a question, but as a newfound, miraculous fact. "With everything I have," Alara confessed, her voice breaking completely. Maya's own eyes filled with tears, but these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of overwhelming, earth-shattering revelation. She leaned in, her forehead coming to rest against Alara's. They stood like that for a long moment, just breathing each other's air, two worlds colliding in the quiet of their kitchen. "I am so stupid," Maya murmured against her skin. "So unbelievably blind." "You're not," Alara whispered back. "You just didn't know." Maya pulled back just enough to look into Alara's eyes. The fear was gone from her expression, replaced by a soft, luminous certainty. A decision had been made. "Alara," she said, her voice soft but firm, a stark contrast to her earlier confusion. "Can I kiss you?" The question was a gift. A permission. A final, beautiful acknowledgement of everything that had remained unspoken for so long. Alara's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't speak. She just nodded, a small, desperate movement. That was all the answer Maya needed. She leaned in slowly, giving Alara every opportunity to pull away, to change her mind. But Alara was rooted to the spot, her entire being focused on this single, impossible moment. The space between their lips dwindled, charged with years of pent-up longing. Alara could feel the warmth of Maya's breath, could see the tiny flecks of green in her honey-gold eyes. And then, their lips met. It was a soft, hesitant touch at first. A question. A gentle exploration. It was tentative and unbelievably sweet, a stark contrast to the storm of emotion raging inside Alara. It tasted of salt from their tears and a deeper sweetness that was just Maya. A shudder went through Alara's body, a release of a tension she had been holding for more than 1,000 days. She made a small sound in the back of her throat, a mix of a sob and a sigh, and her hands, which had been pressed flat against the counter, came up to tangle in the soft fabric of Maya's shirt, pulling her closer. That was all the encouragement Maya needed. The kiss deepened, the initial hesitation melting away into a certainty that was breathtaking. It was no longer a question, but an answer. A declaration. Maya's hand moved from Alara's cheek to the back of her neck, her fingers threading into her hair, holding her there, as if she were afraid Alara might disappear. It was everything. It was a first kiss and 100 kisses all at once. It was the release of every secret, every pained smile, every moment of quiet suffering. It was clumsy and desperate and perfect. It was the feeling of coming home. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless, their chests heaving. They didn't move away, just rested their foreheads together, their eyes closed, their lips still tingling. The only sound in the room was their ragged breathing. "Oh," Maya whispered, the word a puff of warm air against Alara's skin. "Yeah," Alara breathed back, her voice thick with emotion. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in a silence that was no longer heavy and suffocating, but full and vibrant and humming with a new, terrifying, beautiful energy. The world had shifted on its axis, and for the first time, Alara felt like she was finally standing on solid ground. The aftershocks of the kiss lingered, a palpable hum in the air between them. They were still standing in the kitchen, foreheads pressed together, hands clinging to each other as if letting go would send them adrift. The initial euphoria began to subside, replaced by the dawning, terrifying reality of what had just happened. They had crossed a line, a beautiful and irrevocable one, and neither of them knew what lay on the other side. "I'm terrified," Maya whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the quiet room. She didn't open her eyes, as if she were afraid the spell would break if she did. Alara felt a wave of relief so profound it almost buckled her knees. "Good," she breathed. "Me too. I'm absolutely, completely terrified." It was a strange comfort, this shared fear. It was an admission that this was real, that the stakes were impossibly high. They had their friendship, the most important relationship in both of their lives, balanced on the razor's edge of this new, uncharted territory. "What does this mean, Elle?" Maya asked, finally pulling back enough to look at her, her eyes searching Alara's face for answers. "What do we do now? I don't want to mess this up. I can't. I can't lose you." "You won't," Alara said with a conviction that surprised even herself. "We won't mess this up. We talk. That's what we do. We'll just keep talking." They migrated to the couch, sinking into the familiar cushions, but the dynamic was entirely different. They sat close, their knees touching, a constant point of contact that was both grounding and electrifying. Maya picked at a loose thread on a cushion, her brow furrowed in thought. All those times, she began slowly, her voice full of wonder. All those times I came home upset about Liam. About him not listening or not understanding some little thing about me. You always knew. You always understood without me having to explain. Alara just nodded, her heart aching with the memory of all those painful nights. Maya looked up, her eyes bright with a sudden, staggering realization. It wasn't that he was a bad listener. I mean, he was. But that wasn't the real problem. The problem was, I was measuring him against you. The words hit Alara with the force of a physical blow. Maya insisted, seeing the shock on Alara's face. I just didn't know it. I was measuring every relationship I've ever had against what I had with you. The easiness, the understanding, the way we can just be in a room together and not have to say anything. And of course, they all came up short. How could they not? I was comparing a flickering candle to the sun. She reached out and took Alara's hand, her fingers lacing through hers. The fit was perfect. I was in love with our friendship, Alara. I was in love with you. I was just too scared and too conditioned to call it what it was. I was trying to force a puzzle piece into a spot it didn't belong, because I couldn't see the perfect space waiting for it right next to me. Alara felt tears welling up again, but this time, they were tears of validation. Every moment of silent pain, every second of unrequited longing, was being seen, understood, and transformed into something beautiful. Her secret love hadn't been a burden, it had been a baseline, a standard of care and connection that Maya had been subconsciously searching for all along. "So what now?" Alara asked, her voice thick. "You've just gotten out of a 5-year relationship. You're confused. This is a lot." "It is a lot," Maya agreed, her thumb stroking the back of Alara's hand. "And I'm not going to pretend I have it all figured out. My whole world has been turned upside down in the last month, and then again in the last hour. But the strange thing is," she paused, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips for the first time. "This is the first time since the breakup that I don't feel lost. Scared, yes, but not lost. Because I'm with you." The simple sincerity of it mended a crack in Alara's heart she hadn't even known was there. "We take it one day at a time," Maya said, her voice full of a newfound resolve. "We figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations. Just this. We see what this is." "Okay," Alara whispered. "Okay, one day at a time." It was a promise. A pact made in the quiet of their living room, a vow to navigate the terrifying, wonderful new landscape of their relationship with the same honesty and care that had always defined their friendship. The fear was still there, a low hum beneath the surface, but it was now overshadowed by a soaring, brilliant hope. A hope that no longer felt dangerous, but felt like coming home. A month later, Alara woke to the soft morning light filtering through her bedroom window. The first thing she registered was the warmth. A steady, living heat pressed against her back. The second was the weight of an arm draped possessively over her waist. The third was the scent of vanilla and sandalwood, a smell that no longer signaled longing, but belonging. She smiled before she even opened her eyes. Slowly, carefully, she turned over. Maya was still asleep, her face peaceful in the morning glow, her dark hair fanned out across the pillow they now shared. Her lips were slightly parted, and a soft breath escaped them. Alara watched her, her heart swelling with a quiet, profound joy that felt as solid and real as the sunlight warming her skin. The past month had been a delicate, beautiful dance of discovery. The awkwardness had faded quickly, replaced by an intimacy that felt as natural as breathing. They had fallen into a new rhythm, one that was built on hesitant touches that grew more confident, late-night talks that were now punctuated by soft kisses, and a shared understanding that was deeper than words. There were still moments of fear, flashes of "is this real?" that would surface for both of them. But they would talk through it, their honesty a constant anchor in the newness of it all. Maya had dealt with the finality of Liam. He had sent a long, pleading text a week after their kiss, and Maya had shown it to Alara before she replied. Her response had been kind but firm, telling him that she was happy and that she had moved on. There was no mention of Alara, not yet. They had agreed to keep their new world to themselves for a little while, to let it grow strong and sure in the privacy of their home before they shared it with anyone else. Alara reached out, her fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from Maya's forehead. At her touch, Maya's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were clouded with sleep, and then they focused on Alara, and a slow, beautiful smile spread across her face. It was a smile that Alara knew was just for her. "Hi," Maya murmured, her voice thick and sleepy. "Hi," Alara whispered back, leaning in to press a gentle kiss to her lips. It was a soft, chaste kiss, full of morning breath and easy affection. It was perfect. "You're staring," Maya mumbled, snuggling closer, her nose burrowing into the crook of Alara's neck. "I'm allowed," Alara said, her arm tightening around her. "I have a 3-year staring deficit to make up for." Maya chuckled, the sound a warm vibration against Alara's skin. "Fair enough. Just don't get weird about it." "Never," Alara promised, though she knew she would spend the rest of her life marveling at this impossible reality. Waking up next to Maya, loving her and being loved in return. They lay there for a while longer, tangled together in the warm sheets, the sounds of the city waking up outside. It was a perfectly ordinary morning, and yet it felt like a miracle. The ache that had been Alara's constant companion for so long was gone. In its place was a feeling of wholeness, a deep and settled peace she had never imagined was possible. "I have to tell you something," Maya said suddenly, her voice serious, pulling back to look at Alara. Alara's heart gave a little nervous flutter. "Okay." "I was awake before you were," Maya confessed, a playful glint in her eyes. "I was the one staring." Alara laughed, a real, full-throated laugh of pure happiness. She pulled Maya back into a hug, burying her face in her hair. She had thought her role was to be the supportive friend, the silent piner, the keeper of a secret love. She had been so focused on the pain of her own story that she had missed the one that was being written right alongside hers. A story of a girl who was searching for a feeling she couldn't name, looking for a home she didn't realize she had already found. She understood now. The 3 years, 1 month, and 13 days hadn't been a prison sentence. They had been a prelude. Every moment of silent longing, every carefully chosen word of advice, every painful night had been leading them here. To this bed, in this quiet morning light, to this new and breathtaking beginning. "Then we're both exactly where we need to be," Alara whispered, her voice full of a certainty that resonated deep in her soul. And as Maya met her eyes and leaned in for another kiss, Alara knew, with a clarity that felt like sunlight, that she was finally, truly, completely home.